Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Referee Timeout. I'm Mike Baumgartner, APP Director of Officiating and a USAP certified referee.
Hi, and I'm Bob Swisshelm. I am a member of the APP head ref team, and I also am a USA Pickleball certified referee.
So, in this particular episode, we're going to be talking about, what should players be thinking about prior to calling of the score by the referee? What particular actions can they take? What particular actions should they not take? So, we're going to talk, you know, in general, what you should be thinking about prior to the calling of the score. Bob, you want to lead into that?
Sure. And a gist, I'd basically say remember that your responsibility is to get yourself ready to either serve or receive. And that should be, in my mind, now I'm biased and I have an objective, a not so hidden objective. As a referee, I want to get you guys into position. So I would ask you as players to be focused on that, to be able to get ready and get the game moving. Now, having said that, there are certain things that you're allowed to do that kind of slow down that process. But what we as referees like to see is that you're moving toward that. So if you need to get a quick drink, if you need to towel off, if you need to have a brief communication with your partner, that's all fine. If you need to signal how you're going to what side you're going to go to as the receiver's partner. That's all allowed. But what you should not be doing is carrying on a conversation where you're both leaning against the fence back at the behind the baseline, because that's going to end up causing some flow issues.
Yeah, exactly. So that and then you use the word flow, which is actually the right word to use because the referee's trying to keep some type of flow to the match. Think of yourself as a player. If the referee's not controlling the match or there's no flow to the match, you can get quite frustrated by standing around waiting for somebody to get done talking to their partner or somebody taking an unusual amount of time to towel off or get a drink of water. As Bob mentions, those things are allowable in a reasonable amount of time, and the referee should be the one controlling that for you to keep that flow going in the right direction.
And I like the word that you use there, Mike, frustrating, because there have been many times when I, as a referee, will notice a distinct difference in the speed at which players on opponents will get ready, right? And whether or not it is a mind game or not, I have seen many times when a player takes their time. It's still, from my perspective as a referee, it's still a reasonable amount of time to towel off or whatever because it's hot or whatever, and they're off doing that, and I'm seeing the heat level and the frustration level in the
Mhm.
opponent continue to rise. Right
Mhm.
now, I will tell you as a referee, that's not my concern. My concern is to make sure that the player over here is actually being reasonable in the amount of time that they're taking. If they're taking an unreasonable amount of time, I will address that. I want to, but I can't tell the opponent that's letting it get under the skin to tell you, hey, they're just messing with your head. Don't let them do that. So now in this environment, I can coach
Yeah.
you. So I urge you as a player, if you've got an opponent that is slowing the thing down, remember that they have certain rights, and you can request or let the referee know that that is potentially ask them to monitor that. But I would urge you as a player just to let it go. Right?
Yeah,
Okay.
you know what? So many times here's what I see sometimes, Bob, and you tell me if you've seen the same thing. So it's like the server towels off after every rally, right? And then the opponent is, as you're saying, playing there, it's getting in their head, right? So what do? As soon as that person, the server's done toweling off, they walk over and start toweling off, right? So as a referee, this potentially can become an issue from both ends of the court. And you have to address that because we want to ensure the flow of the game or the pace of the match. And that could potentially lead into unsportsmanlike or delay of game penalties for either team, right? So the important thing is the word reasonable or the phrase reasonable amount of time. Understand as a player, you can do these things in a reasonable amount of time. because we don't want to interrupt the flow of the match.
Right. So I would urge you, there's gamesmanship. So yes, if you realize that you're getting under the skin, I suppose tweaking them a little bit is good. But the other thing that we try to get people to do is just to come back and play pickleball. So I would say kind of try to release your internal frustration in your opponent, and also try to release your internal desire for revenge and playback. So Mike was talking about, well, if we as a referee see one person telling off and then another person beginning to tell off after that second person is doing, I don't know if you try to address that, Mike, but I would say I would want to see those things happening concurrently.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what ends
Hmm.
up happening is that it takes forever, right? The
Yeah.
other thing to remember is that all of you have certain rights. And so try not to get upset about somebody exercising their rights. There's a relatively famous pro player who, back when we would fault people for not or being out of position, they would constantly say, "Am I good? Am I good? Am I good?" Every single rally, almost. Now, I will say that that player needed to do that because I refed them a number of times when the one time that they did not ask, they were out of position, and I actually faulted them.
Yeah.
We've also seen some relatively famous clips of where that player is doing that and their opponent is letting it get under their skin and they blow out of, they
Yeah.
have a disproportionate angered response. So again, I urge you, number one, to understand the things we've been talking about what rights you have and what rights your opponent have, and let them exercise those rights. And if they do, that's fine. We as referees are going to let them exercise their rights, regardless of whether or not it frustrates you. And so I would urge you not to let that frustrate you and focus on pickleball.
So you mentioned briefly at the beginning of this particular episode, you know, player communication or players talking to each other between rallies and doing so in a reasonable amount of time. So we've talked all this episode is about what can you do prior to calling of the serve, right? The score. And let me pose this quick question to you, Bob. What if you've called the score and now the players start talking to each other again? What potentially comes into play there?
Okay, so this would be a 10-second violation potentially. So once I am done calling the score, you have 10 seconds to serve. And so I'm inside my head, I'm counting. Right. And so if you're off there having a conversation, say I've already completed calling the score, I began calling the score, and then you realize you need to have a conversation with your partner, and you put your hand up thinking that that's a not ready signal. Well, technically it is a not ready signal, but in the last episode, we mentioned that we as referees ignore not ready signals once the score has begun to be called. So that is irrelevant. So you're now on the clock. And what we will be doing as referees is internally counting. And then at some point, many of us will be doing this to indicate that we're getting really, really close. And
Hmm.
we will call a 10-second violation if you have not served within that 10 seconds. Is that answering your
So,
question?
yeah, exactly. So, pose another question to you. Does a player have the right to ask you or tell you to recall the score prior to serving if you've already called the score and you've started that
Absolutely.
10-second clock?
Absolutely. So in the last one, we talked about that. What are the three questions that you can ask? Am I the correct server? Am I in the correct position? And what is the score? And we accept any type of variation on the gist of those questions. One of them we mentioned is, am I good? Okay. The other is not so much a question as a statement. Please recall the score. We will accept that as a request to recall the score. I mean, technically it's not a question, but and we're not going to force you to say what was the score again, because even though you knew what the score was, you want us to recall the score. So if you just say, "Hey, please recall the score," then we will.
Exactly.
All right, so we're talking about player focus. Player focus should be on getting yourself to play, all that type of stuff. When you look at the referee, when they have their hand up, that means they're getting ready to call the score. And if they've not begun and you're not really quite ready, you should raise your hand. I will say that we've talked about what some of the not ready signals are. raising your hand above your head is the most common and the most visible and the most appropriate mechanism for you to say, hey, I am not ready. And you can actually use this in an unofficiated match as well. When I play with people, sometimes people don't choose to call the score or they're not paying attention to me. But remember that in an unofficiated match, you as the server have the same responsibility that the referee has to make sure that your opponents are ready before you begin calling the score. So if I have a player or an opponent that likes to quick serve, right? And they whatever. I'm going to be standing here with my hand above my head, and they're going to serve the ball, and I'm going to catch it and say, "Hey, I wasn't ready," and I'm going to throw it back, and I'm going to make them wait for me to be ready, not obnoxiously, but if they're that is the mechanism that I have in even in an unofficiated match to make sure that they're making sure they understand what my rights are as a receiver.
Yeah, you've probably run across this before, Bob, but I've seen it, and I like this communication as a referee. It's like I'm looking for the readiness of the receiver before I start calling the score, and I give fair and ample time to everybody to get ready. But I really like it when the player communicates to me that they're not just giving a not ready signal, they're giving me a motion signal that they are ready. So they'll just give me this, give me a little head bob, or give me one of these. As a referee, that to me is a great communication between two players to ensure, one, that I know they're ready, they know they're ready, everybody's ready, right?
Right.
So I enjoy that particular aspect of the players that will do that to the referee.
Right. And that's particularly important if the referee, if the player, sorry, the player has some type of routine. We didn't mention this in the other one, but there are many players that have a routine that they go through either before they serve or before they receive.
Yeah.
And we as referees
Hmm.
try to understand that and deal with it. I mean, we're not going to try to call the score on you when you're in the middle of your routine. And we talked earlier about not letting your opponent frustrate you. If your opponent has a routine, understand it and deal with it. And if you know that it takes them 3 seconds to get ready, wait for them to do that before you get ready or before you get yourself mindset. So again, I strongly suggest that you try not to let your opponent get in your head.
Yeah,
Okay,
for
so
sure.
so then you should be focused on getting yourself into position, focused on the referee. The referee is going to be sticking their hand up when they are getting ready to call the score. Their hand is going to be down when they're after they're done calling the score. If you see the referee doing this, that means they've called the score and they're getting ready to fault you for a 10-second violation. So either serve if you're ready
Hmm.
or ask a question to reset the clock.
Yep,
Uh,
perfect.
um,
So this was what was this, our sixth episode on the serve?
I think so, yes,
I
because
think
we
so.
split we split the other one in half. So
Yeah,
yes,
I think we've covered the serve quite well,
cool.
Bob. Six
Yes,
episodes and 15 minutes apiece.
yep, yep,
A lot
pretty
of
good stuff.
discussion about the
Yeah,
serve, but yeah, it's good stuff.
we find that we can sit here and talk about this forever. So I really like the fact that we're trying to keep ourselves in line here in terms of the timing. So, all right.
Yeah, I think the series and the overall concept of referee timeout is a great way to bridge the gap between players understanding the rules and players understanding what the referee is actually doing to manage the match. So the last couple of episodes, we've really gotten into a lot more of the mechanics of the referee and how they're controlling or understanding uh, the match flow associated with the serve itself. So I hope the viewers out there are watching this. Number one, they're giving us a like, they're subscribing, because I think we are really sharing a lot of valuable information that could help you earn a point during a match.
Yep. So, and it's important, I think, for us to receive that feedback. Mike and I think we're doing an awesome job, right? But the way that you let us know whether or not we are really doing an awesome job is to like the episodes, subscribe to us, and also you can actually put in comments on the YouTube or the podcast or whatever. So we appreciate and we read those comments. You can also send us emails at referee.timeout@gmail.com. We very much want to learn from you about whether or not you're receiving value for this. We're having a great time. This is a
Yeah.
lot of fun, and we will continue to do this until we get kicked out. But also, we're doing this for you. So we would love to know whether or not you are getting value out of this. Now, if you're not getting value out of it, it's probably not worth your time to put in any type of negative trolling comments. But if you do like it, please let us know and let us know what types of things you want us to talk about. Or what you're going to begin to see is that we've got a couple guest hosts, guest referees, and other people to come
Yeah.
in. If
Yeah.
there's any particular topic, not only the topic you want us to talk about, but if there's a specific person that you want to see, we most of us, or between the two of us, we probably know a lot of people, almost everybody, and so we
Mhm.
can try to get them in and talk to you about fun stuff as well. So please send us suggestions.
Yeah. So, talking about future episodes, we do have a couple in mind. All right. We're going to bring one particular person on to talk about if you're at a tournament and it's non-refereed and you have to fill out the score sheet. How do you properly fill out the score sheet? So we're going to have an episode about that. We're going to bring in somebody from operations to talk about what does it take to put a tournament on? What's going on behind the scenes at operations? You may have questions associated with that. Feel free to send us those questions. So when we're ready to do the episode, we have those questions loaded up and we have the answers for you.
All right. Thanks a lot, Mike. This
All
is
right.
always fun. Thanks for dragging me kicking and screaming into this. And we'll, guys, see you the next time or see you on the courts.
All right, Bob. Yeah, always good to see you, Bob. Thanks again. Take care, everybody.